2021. From 2006 to 2021, he worked with Danish Institute for Quality and Accreditation in Healthcare, and since 2010, she is Deputy Chief Executive. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the World Patient Alliance for the opportunity to be here with all of you today. I represent ISQA, the International Society for Quality in Healthcare. We are membership-based organizations with members all over the world. We have individual members and institutional members, and they share a passion, dedication, interest for quality in healthcare. We work under the tagline Network Knowledge Voice, and I'll be happy to tell any of you who comes up to me afterwards more about what we're doing. But now over to the topic for the discussion today, patient engagement in regulatory issues. In our view, and we view person-centeredness as one of the key components of quality in healthcare, there are a lot of potential benefits of involving and engaging patients as partners. It will lead to improved decision-making and policy development as patients have insights about treatment experience, unmet needs, and quality of life considerations that regulators might otherwise not be aware of. We believe that it will lead to enhanced trust and transparency in regulation and consequentially also in health system, and it provides opportunities for empowerment and engagement of patients. Obviously, there are challenges as well. How do we find the right way to find a representation of the patient view? And I think we need to be very transparent about how and whom we involve. Also, there's a risk that involving patients in things so highly technical as regulation might lead to the involvement becoming tokenistic. So there need to be resources to educate patients to take the role, but there need also to be an acknowledgement that the knowledge gap goes both ways. The professionals, healthcare professionals, also need to take advantage of the knowledge that patients can provide for them. So I look forward to listening to 4 eminent speakers who will tell us about the African experience in this area. I'm sure we can learn a lot from them. And without further ado, let me introduce to you the moderator of the panel discussion, Andrew Spiegel. Andrew is the chair of World Patients Alliance. He has nearly 2 decades of experience in the patient advocacy arena. He co-founded the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, now leading the US-based National Patient Advocacy Organization dedicated to colon cancer. Over to you, Andrew.
Sure. Thank you, Carson. Thank you. So this is, I think, the 3rd time that I'm moderating a panel on patient engagement in regulatory affairs. The last 2 times we had regulators on the panel. We had the FDA, we had the EMA, and what we learned on those panels is that the importance of patient engagement in regulatory affairs is more important than ever. And we learned that the EMA and the FDA, and now a 3rd regulator, Health Canada, have quarterly phone calls in their departments for patient engagement on how they engage patient advocates and patients in their regulatory conversations. The reason I bring that up is because the last time we did this conference, what we learned was that in Europe, the EMA actually tracks data on policies that change as a result of patient involvement. And what I mean by that is that the EMA has set up a program, the European Medicines Association has set up a program where they look at policies and then they bring in patients and patient advocates to discuss those policies, and they track the number of policies that change as a result of bringing in the patient. I don't have the exact data with me, but it was roughly more than 40% of the time the EMA's policy changed once they included patients. And even what I thought was astounding is that 20% of scientific policies changed as a result of including patients. And so the regulators now understand, and we have suggested to the World Health Organization that they take this issue on and codify how all regulators around the world can work together to bring patients into these regulatory matters. And we hope that the WHO will continue to have these dialogues with us about how to engage patients in regulatory matters. But for today, we have an interesting panel that I'm going to ask the panel members to please come up to the stage. And we're going to start with talking about the perspectives of how we best engage patients and patient advocates on this whole journey of healthcare. And so, my panelists, please come up to the stage, and we are going to start with Vanessa. Vanessa, would you please? Vanessa from African Union Development Agency. Take it away. Would you please introduce yourself and present? Do whatever you want to.
I'll stay here. Thank you so much. So I'm Vanessa Msengezi, and I'm representing the African Union today. I am specifically from the organ of the African Union, which is the development agency. So the African Union Development Agency, commonly known as NEPAD, because that was our former name. So I am a policy advocacy lead. So I basically work under a program called the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative, which is a mouthful. So it's commonly known as the AMRH initiative. And this is where I lead policy advocacy initiatives, as well as support to strengthening institutional development plans under the AMRH for regulators on the continent. Thank you.
All right. David from Uganda, Dr. David Yamana, would you please?
Yeah, thank you
Present.
very much. Sorry for the pronunciation. I'm David Nahamia
Thank you.
from Uganda, a drug regulatory agency from Uganda. I'm happy to be here. And I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to give my experience as a regulator as far as involvement of patients in regulatory issues. Thank you very much.
Regina, we have heard from you already, but why don't you introduce yourself one more time?
Thank you very much, Regina Mariam Namata Kamoga, the Executive Director for Community Health and Information Network, as well as the Founding Director of the World Patient Alliance. Delighted to be here again.
Great, great. And Dr. Caputo?
Hi, how are you? I would like to declare that we will have to remove the doctor part. I'm Wendy Cupido. I'm the General Manager for Roche South Africa, as well as the sub-region. But today I'm here to represent the IFPMA. And it's also a mouthful, Vanessa, but who I'm representing is a company, an independent company or regulatory authority that manages the ethics around global pharmaceutical companies and how we register and market medication. So lovely to be here, and welcome to South Africa and welcome to Cape Town.
Thank you, non-doctor. Why don't we begin with you, and why don't you tell us your perspective on the importance of the role of patients in regulatory matters?
So you're asking the correct person. I think I'm very, very patient-centric. And I think in everything that we do, even in pharmaceutical, we have to be patient-centric. And when it comes to making regulatory decisions around medication, I think patients should certainly be involved. I mean, we sit at these tables discussing clinical trials, discussing drug development, discussing registration of products, but we don't have patients sitting in the room. So I was very inspired by Tumi and her story. We need patients sitting in the room who are able to tell us the story, who are able to tell us the lived experience. And by telling us the lived experience, we are able to then represent you when it comes to patient safety, when it comes to registration of new drugs. If we sit in the room, we are able to bring these innovative treatments to Africa, because we don't have many innovative treatments that are in Africa, and we would like to bring those into Africa, and we need to leverage off US patients in order to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember when involving patients and patient advocates felt like it was sort of doing it without a real expectation of engagement. It almost was like a feel-good thing. We'll put a patient in the room, but we don't really ask them a lot of questions. We don't really involve them. It was almost to check a box to say, yeah, we had a patient in the room. But today it feels completely different. Can you explain your perspective on that?
I have never disputed having a patient in the room, I think as IFPMA as well. I always say in meetings, we must never underestimate the power of a patient. Patients are the most powerful stakeholders in access to treatment, in registration of treatment, in the regulatory of medication. Patients have a voice, and it gives me such great pride that you're now celebrating your second conference. And from what you say, the number of people here has almost doubled. This is very inspiring because you have a voice, and us as innovative pharmaceutical companies do believe that. Us as who are regulated by the IFPMA do believe the power of patients is very big.
Right. Vanessa, you have a different perspective. You're here, and things are different on how patients get engaged in Africa. And I will tell you that Toomey coming up and telling her story, or Candace coming up and telling their personal stories about the journeys that they've had through cancer and things of that nature, it's not easy to get people in Africa to tell their stories. We learned that there's cultural barriers, there's fears, people lose friends when they tell them about a cancer diagnosis, people lose their partners, people lose family members, people don't want to tell their stories when they're sick. So how do we overcome that, and how do we get those stories out there?
Thank you so much. So from the African perspective, and specifically looking at the program that I'm representing, which is the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization, we specifically were trying to address issues to do with fragmentation on the continent. In terms, David, for example, is here. He's a regulator that we work closely with from Uganda. What Uganda was doing was different from what South Africa was doing, Tanzania, etc. And we had to really come together and say, let us work together, let us harmonize policies, systems, processes. In the same vein, let us also harmonize how we engage patients. So patients are pivotal to our work. They inform issues to do with the drugs that they take. They report in terms of adverse drug reactions, etc. And yes, it is challenging, this landscape of patient engagement in these very technical issues. But to us, it's highly important that we engage them. There's lots of differences on the continent. When you look at Africa, Africa is made up of so many different cultures, languages as well. French speaking, Swahili, there are about 5 languages that we consider as African Union languages. So you can imagine how difficult it has been for us to engage patients. But we continue to advocate from the African Union perspective to our regulatory authorities on the continent that let us continue to bring in patients. They have a valid voice, but not only that, they need the information. So when they get engaged in the languages that are relevant to them, in a cultural way that's also relevant to them, we find that they stay better engaged. Thank you.
Oh. And as a result of that engagement, better decisions come from the regulators. David, what's your perspective on this?
Thank you very much. I heard from your introduction that the EMEA and FDA are, of course, already advanced in that line. What I can tell you, we have also started learning. My sister here, Regina, when he started coming to us, we started changing our thinking because we thought for us, we know it all. What do these patients know? Even our clinicians, you know, even on the continent, they know it all. You go there, they prescribe, you're not supposed to even ask a question. What do you know? Go and get the drug and take. So that is what my sister is saying, changing the thinking, even of our clinicians. You just go there, you're not supposed to ask any question. Have prescribed, go and get the drug. So even us as regulators, we have started thinking, we have started to change, because as regulators, it's easy for us to have a soft landing when you are trying to implement some of these policies, which can come from the patients. We can no longer do without the patients. And I think that is what even the harmonization on the content is trying to do. Otherwise, soft landing and better implementation can be done when the patients understand the policies. What we are trying to do after having a lot of discussion with my sister Regina, even on our committees, we have a committee like on essential drugs. We have tried to involve some of the patient organizations so that our patients can understand the policies, so that when we are going to implement, it becomes easy for us. So there are so many things to learn from the patient. Even when we are going to register the drug, we can get a perspective on what is the best dosage form for the patients. In the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that's when we learned the importance of the patients. We got most of the reports, pharmacovigilance reports, from patients, not from the clinicians, from patients. Most of the reports we got were from the patients. Now we started now thinking differently. And now we are involving the patient organizations. But the main issue is, how do we involve them? What are the policy guidelines on how to involve these patients whom we think they don't understand? But we now, with the telemedicine, with internet, most of the patients, they are beginning to understand. You don't just prescribe. Sometimes you get challenges. So there's a shift there. And I think this is a big forum where I'm also learning. You have mentioned the FDA and the EMEA. No, I'm now going to WHO. When I go back, I'm going to also inform the powers to be, so that we can also change. Thank you very much.
This is good. This is good. And I am happy to share those slides, by the way. I have the presentations from the European Medicines Association, from Health Canada, and from the US FDA and they give a full overview of how they engage patients along the entire cycle of drug development, from even before a drug is approved all the way through post-marketing pharmacovigilance. And the other thing that we've learned over the years is that patients like to engage differently. Some patients want to be in person at maybe an HTA hearing, and they want to be at the table, and they want to be involved, and they want to be informed, and they want to be an active participant live. And other patients want the opposite of that. They want to stay home, and they want to be given the questions in advance, and they want to have time to reflect on their answers and not have to answer live in front of intimidating smart people. And so are the regulators, and I ask this of all panel members, how important is that issue to you, and what are the regulators doing about ensuring that they make the patient's interaction with the regulators as smooth and easy as possible?
I think on my experience from Uganda, we are trying to involve the patient through committees, like patient organizations like the one my sister is leading. We put them on committees, and we're also trying to educate them on regulatory issues. Most of them, they may be ignorant, but we are also trying to do some education, involving them in the decision-making. As I've already mentioned, we got a lot of data from patients directly. So and I think on regulatory harmonizations, the AU, they are trying to also make policies towards that line. Thank you very much. Maybe.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So from the African Union, like my brother David is saying, we have been engaging patients specifically on the AMRH initiative through a partnership platform. So the partnership platform comprises of almost 50 partners now, and they come from diverse backgrounds. We have technical partners, we have funding partners, but we also have civil society and advocacy partners. So that would include the patient organizations. And this is a formal platform. And for us, we really consider it a starting point of our engagement. It is at times difficult for us to know how to identify partner organizations and patient organizations, sorry. It's very difficult. There are so many, they're diverse. So it's easier for us when we engage through these type of platforms. And I also just want to add that patients should also feel free to come to us. So it's not always about us trying to reach out and invite patients to different platforms, but we would want you to feel free to also come to us, to engage with us. And also, you know, in the sense that you should define how you want to be engaged with. It's not always us who needs to define that level of engagement, but you should also let us know how you prefer to be engaged. We've also put together some training programs, training guides, specifically for patients and civil society organizations to better understand our programs, where we really break down the technical jargon of regulation and regulatory harmonization and all of the technical areas involved. So that's accessible on our website, etc. And it's just a training and capacity building opportunity that we also would want patients to access and get better acquainted with our work.
And what is that website before we go on?
Yes, so that's the African Union Development Agency. If you just say AUDA, NEPAD, you'll find it. You'll find a guide, it's a training guide. It's accessible. You can read more about this work and understand your role as patients, and also get an understanding of how to advocate for policies, for frameworks that support access to safe medical products and good quality medical products that actually work.
Anyone else have any perspective on that? No. Regina, you're the patient advocate on the panel. What do you perceive as the barriers to patient engagement from the patient's perspective? What is preventing patients from doing exactly as Vanessa suggested, going to the agency and saying, how can I help? I want to tell my story.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. There are quite several barriers. First of all, the regulatory issues, the topic itself is very complex. The language that they use, the patients are not empowered enough to know the technicalities, even the mandate of these regulatory authorities or the drug development processes. So there's need to empower them, build their capacity to be able to participate effectively, because it would involve, for instance, I know that Penny sits on FDA committees, but she has to go through these very big documents to be able to read all the drug development processes, to be able to approve these medicines. So that's on a high level, and especially from where I come from, with patients that have low levels of literacy as well as health literacy. And when it comes to digital literacy, it's again a nightmare. So I want to see more of the regulators that are here and other stakeholders meaningfully, deliberately putting structures in place to see that they take it upon themselves to empower these patients to participate effectively. Because I know that especially in Africa, we're still lagging behind. The value of the patients input, their firsthand experiences, their lived experiences, their firsthand real world experiences are not yet appreciated. So there's still a lot that needs. Of course, there are other barriers. They have the double burden of diseases. They are vulnerable. They're poor accessibility to even get to the places. But also on the other hand, there's also the barrier because the regulators, sometimes they don't know how to deal with the patients, how to involve them. And many times I find people when I talk about patient advocacy and someone asks me, even on the plane when I was coming, I was talking about that I was coming to a patient congress. And then this person was looking at me and saying, patients, so you're going to get them in a hospital in Cape Town and bring them to the meeting. And we're talking about this year, 2024, someone is still asking those questions. Where are these patients? Where are we getting them? So there's a lack of knowledge of even how to engage and where even to find them. Some has she mentioned about this. So continuously, but for me, sitting here and listening to all the panelists and how they're appreciating the value, that makes my day. And from David from Uganda, we work together and he knows how much I've been knocking at their doors resiliently, not giving up. So I think in terms of a success story of advocacy, I think I'm giving flowers to myself today.
Yay. You deserve flowers, for sure.
So, yeah, I think from a pharmaceutical company perspective, we have barriers too. I think the first barrier is, I'm sure some of you are sitting here thinking big bad pharma, right? And it's difficult for us, although we advocate for engagement with patients, we have regulatory restrictions in terms of how we interact with patients. And these restrictions are as a result of us being perceived to be involved in bribery of patients and regulatory authorities or government authorities. So the way in which we interact is a very, very careful one. And it is, and we self-govern ourselves in terms of how we interact with patients. So I think it's very, very important that we highlight that. So often, you know, we're seen as keeping a distance, but there are legal reasons or ethical reasons as to why we do that. And just in the other barrier I'd like to touch on is how quickly we get our products to market. And it speaks to what Vanessa referred to, is that we are also fragmented in Africa as to how we register medication, as to how medication is assessed in each country. So I think the plan, and we've been working with the IFP and Vanessa for about 10 years, as to how can we find a way to have one regulation or one regulatory system that assesses medication, where we can rely on different countries. So say, for instance, Nigeria registers medication and their regulatory authority registers medication. We should be able to rely on Nigeria's data in order to register our medication faster. So in South Africa, for instance, some medications take 3 to 5 years. That's a good timeline to get these medications registered. The big question is, where can patient advocacy groups help us to register this medication faster?
Yeah, and it's not a good timeline from the patient that needs that medicine. Believe me, that's a horrible timeline. And I know that that's a good timeline from an industry perspective, when traditionally it took 10 to 15 years to get a drug from development to the patient. And so it's a significant improvement, but for the patients that need that drug, they need it now. And so, you know, when patients go to regulators and they want to get informed about how they can get involved. So, and this may come back to you, Regina, with all of the cultural barriers that you face in Africa for getting people to come forward and to tell their stories and to put the barriers beside and recognize that the value of telling their story is a great public good, that drugs are going to get to patients faster, they're going to be safer, they're going to be more tolerable, because you're not including patients just to include them. You're asking them relevant questions of what side effects would you be willing to tolerate? What side effects would you not be willing to tolerate? And that is so valuable for companies and for regulators, because if you develop this magical drug, the patients are unwilling to take it, everybody's lost. So Regina, how do you overcome those cultural barriers to get people to come forward and tell their stories to regulators?
I think it goes to empowerment, because first of all, we have to, like, we do health literacy, and it's about not just giving the information, but is the patient able to process this information and able to act upon it to make a decision that would impact their life. So it's about continuous engagement, but mostly empowerment, because once they realize, once they understand the value of what this means, then they're better able to participate despite the cultural barriers.
Yeah.
And I want to share some experience we had recently. We're implementing a Pfizer-funded grant on malaria diagnosis and treatment. We're training the village health teams in the community. And there was the whole issue about the quality of data. It's a big issue. So we're telling them to make sure that they record correctly what they, the data they get from the community. And it was a very engaging discussion. When they were giving us feedback, we told them how this data affects the decisions that are made at the national level in terms of what medicines are needed, where and how. So one of them actually said, "Oh my God, I've been forging data, but I didn't know the impact. I didn't know that what I feed into this goes all the way to national level decisions." So, and that was so powerful. So again, it's about empowerment, but many times we do it in an ad hoc way, but we have to sustain it to ensure that it's a process and a continuous process.
Thank you for that. We have about 2 minutes left on this panel. I thought I would ask the audience if anybody has a question for the panel. Oh, we might get a microphone over to them. Oh, there you go. Anybody has a question, just run up there and go right ahead. Just say your name, your organization, and shoot.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tony Roberts. I work with Deborah South Africa for patients that have epidermolysis bullosa. Thanks so much. This has been a great discussion. I just wanted to make mention of we've been chatting about how to upskill the patient, how to get them kind of understanding some of the terms and stuff. And I just wanted to make mention of the UPATI Patient Expert Program, which is about just that. We learn about drugs research and development from the beginning right to the end, pharmacovigilance, pharmacogenomics, all the bits. And I think it would be incredible to have more patients doing that program from developing countries and Africa. I'm about to complete it. The graduation is next week in Madrid. So yeah, if you're a patient or if you're leading an organization or a physician, it's an incredible course in terms of involving the patient and getting them to understand terms and therefore be able to input more effectively in the discussions. Thanks.
Right. And so that's really a sort of a formal training for patient advocates to become better patient advocates. And that's UPATI, it's EUPATI.org. Is that right? Something like that. So if you just Google Yeah, UPATI, EUPATI, that is a really valuable resource. Thank you for bringing that up. Dr. Aurora.
Thank you. So I must comment to for asking that African Union is taking part for regulatory is taking interest in Asian empowerment. But what we usually see only in these meetings or in platform, we do hear all these good things which are good over years, even over India, wherever we are. But what actually you do for implementing it? Because see, during these meetings or I can say conferences, do regulators say, okay, we are doing this, this, and this. But what actually you do on the ground level so that hospitals or doctors, they implement your decisions. So that will like to know because how to get it implemented. Because if you may take decisions at higher levels, but actual that when that goes to the ground level, it is not being implemented. So what action you are taking for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, as always, Dr. Aurora. Any response from the panel? I know we're out of time, but any response?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it is a policy from up downwards, as my sister from Nepal has mentioned. Paradigm shift, change. I can tell even in our policies, there is some information we say this information is for a clinician. This information should not go to the patient. They will say, if you are going to advertise this drug can be advertised to the patient level. This one only to the clinician. So policy, at the policy level, we need to change, and then it can trickle down. More sensitization, and also to empower the patient to know their rights. They don't know that they have some rights. Whatever I prescribe, whatever I say, they should take it or leave it. So we need to change the paradigm shift thinking, even on for example, as regulators. So I think we need to do more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I turn it back over to Carson.
Thank you to the panelists. It's been a very interesting discussion. I heard a great commitment to engaging patients. I also heard the importance of finding the right way, considering both cultural and individual preferences of patients. You should find partners. You should build structures to make it sustainable. And it's also, Vanessa, as you said, important not just to reach out to patients, but also open a door that allows them to reach into us. And why do we do this? Well, regulation is there to protect patients, and one famous quote is nothing about me without me. So there is an ethical consideration, but there's also, it will also make regulation better, because regulators, professionals know many things, but they don't know the answer to the question, what matters to you? That to me is the core question, framing person-centeredness. And I was very impressed by the data Andrew mentioned at the beginning, that 40% of EMA decisions were changed, even 20% of scientific decisions were changed, hopefully, and I'm sure they were for the better. And I could only encourage agencies all over the world to collect data like this, but this is very important to promote that this is not just something we do because it's nice, but we really, all of us can benefit from it. Thank you.
And thank you, Carson. And I will just say that the WHO is here. The WHO is online listening. We once again ask the WHO to please get involved in this issue and get all of these things that we're talking about codified into regulation, and have every regulator in the world have the same policies that the FDA, the EMA, Health Canada, that they have for patient engagement, and start involving all of the regulators, not just those three. Thank you all.